Scotland's former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon is going to face another round of grilling at the Scottish COVID inquiry today. The proceedings will investigate the Scottish Parliament's devolved strategic response to the pandemic.
The inquiry is expected to particularly focus on Sturgeon's record-keeping and usage of informal channels, such as WhatsApp.
We're here to provide more depth and context into what is expected from the inquiry. Shadow Health Secretary for Scotland, Dr Sandesh Gulhane, thank you so much for your time, and Peter's still in the studio with us. Dr Sandesh, what are the questions that you want to see answered?
Well, thank you very much for having me on. So look, what I really want to know is where are the messages and can we get them from what happened? Because I think the public have been misled. We've been told that business was not conducted on WhatsApp. And look, we have to remember that WhatsApp doesn't just mean the messaging service, it also means all electronic communication. So Nicola Sturgeon said, look, we don't use WhatsApp. Humza Yousaf said in chamber to us that they don't routinely use WhatsApp. But it's very clear from what we've seen so far at the COVID inquiry that they did. You know, Nicola Sturgeon had a gold command, which no one knew about, which was a small cabal of people who were making decisions. She had direct access to Debbie Sridhar, who was just giving her information. And look, this is probably the worst thing. When you saw Liz Lloyd, her chief of staff, they had a conversation about having a good old-fashioned ramming, an argument basically with the UK government because they were bored. That's what they wanted to do, not for the public good, not because they felt that they wanted to diverge policy for the science, but because they were bored. I mean, this is what we're facing, and this is what a lot of people said was somebody we should be looking up to and was doing some amazing work up in Scotland. And this is simply not true.
So the Scottish Government were essentially doing what the Conservative government were doing in London, communicating by WhatsApp in order to coordinate their response to the pandemic.
What you're seeing is the fact that we don't know because they deleted, and it's not just it's gone missing. They have actively and calculatedly deleted all their communication. We saw Jason Leach up here say that deletion was his bedtime ritual. We've seen a senior civil servant. Now, this is the problem. A senior civil servant whose job it should be to ensure fairness and to ensure that things are recorded, say that plausible deniability is his middle name, and reminding people that the chat they had is searchable under FOI rules. So to delete them. And so everyone deleted them. John Swinney, our deputy first minister at the time, manually deleted all his WhatsApp messages. This is to hide what was going on, to hide the communication in the UK inquiry in England.
The communication that the Scottish government had during the pandemic was rated consistently highly by the Scottish public, much higher than the Conservative government's communication to the UK population as a whole.
So what we saw again when we were looking at the COVID inquiry was Nicola Sturgeon deciding to run out and say what was agreed that the Prime Minister should be saying, but decided to go and run out and say it in front of the Prime Minister the days before he was going to go and say it. What we also saw was Nicola Sturgeon basically doing a party political broadcast every single day on TV. But what she was saying, you know, the fact that she said to Kieran Jenkins, Channel 4, that she would be keeping all her messaging, but what I was told in parliamentary chamber, that all messaging would be kept, because ultimately we need to know why a decision was made. In the UK, in England, all messages have been passed over. You've got hundreds of thousands of messages, and you can see, and you might not like it, but you can see how decisions were arrived at. And that's important because the point of the COVID inquiry is to learn, is to try to find out what happened, how it happened, and learn lessons. What lessons can we learn if you delete everything on purpose to hide the way you made decisions? Because what we're finding out is actually it's not following the science, it's having a very small group and it's just making a decision on the hoof. As you can see when it comes to weddings, where Liz Lloyd was just asked, well, what should we do? What number should we say? Hours before Nicola Sturgeon went on TV to
Hold right
announce it.
there, Sandesh. In the studio with us is Peter Cardwell still. Peter, I think what we're learning as the Scottish COVID inquiry gets underway are very similar lessons to the one we learnt when the COVID inquiry started here in England, is actually the way in which politicians were communicating was unusual. WhatsApp became a key decision maker. And then when we try and unpick all of that, we either can't find the WhatsApps or the decision trail to work out how those decisions were made.
You're absolutely right, and it isn't just Nicola Sturgeon who lost or deleted a lot of WhatsApps. There are lots of other people as well, including Boris Johnson, who couldn't find them. But certainly there are many questions for the Scottish Government to answer. Face masks, for example, the policy around that was not robust in any way and was used in a political way rather than in a medical way. There are lots and lots of questions for Nicola Sturgeon. I think it's going to be box office later on today at the COVID inquiry in Scotland, and we'll see what happens there. And also, I mean, her political career is basically over. It's different for serving politicians at the COVID inquiry in London, for example.
As Nick made the point, at the time, Nicola Sturgeon was rating well with the public in Scotland. They felt like she was doing a good job. So
absolutely.
What's happened in the years since has really been quite extraordinary.
It has indeed. There have been many, many developments. We know all about the motorhome. We know all about the criminal charges that may be brought but haven't been brought so far, but certainly the investigation that's there into her husband, other people in regard to party finances. In terms of the COVID handling itself, we're learning a lot more than we were previously. We're seeing behind the mask, behind the curtain essentially, and some of the messages were a little bit unedifying, some fruity language in there as well. But certainly I think a lot of people will be very disappointed in what happened, and also policy making being made on the hoof rather than based on real evidence.
Peter, thank you so much. Dr Sandesh as well, really appreciate your time.